everyone, and welcome to this video going over lesson 27.2, factoring ax squared plus bx plus c. Let's get started. In part A, it says, how is the trinomial 2x squared plus 7x plus 6 different from the trinomials we have factored so far? So normally if we see a trinomial like this, we would use our magic x. But what's different about this trinomial than other trinomials we've seen so far is that this trinomial has a coefficient in front of the x squared. Up until this point, we have only been seeing trinomials that are just x squared with no number in front, such as x squared plus 4x plus 5. So how will our magic x be different if we actually have a number in front of our x squared instead of just 1? So let's see. In B, it says factor 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. Remember, we label A, B, and C. When we have a value in front of our x squared, not only do we put C on the top, but we multiply A times C to the top. So instead of just putting 6 like we normally do, we are going to put 2 times 6, which will be 12. So that's the first change. On the top of my magic x is A times C. So 2 times 6, which will be 12. B still goes on the bottom. So 7 will still be on the bottom of my magic x. And then the process is the same. I'm still thinking about two numbers that multiply to 12, but will add to 7. And so the first two numbers that come to mind for me are 3 and 4. Because I know that 3 times 4 is 12, and 3 plus 4 will get me 7. And here's the other change. I'm going to take my a value and make fractions with the two values I came up with. So notice 2 is my a value, so 2 goes on top, and my two values are on the denominator of my fractions. I then simplify if I can. 2 over 3 cannot be simplified, but 2 over 4 can be simplified to 1 over 2. And the thing about these fractions is this is how my binomial is going to look. The value on the numerator is going to be the coefficient of my x, and the number on the bottom is what is being added or subtracted. So for example, 2x over 3 becomes 2x plus 3. I have 2x and 3. And my 1x over 2 becomes 1x plus 2. And those are my two binomials. If I were to do my magic box just to check, I have 2x and 3 and x and 2. 2x times x is 2x squared. X times 3 is 3x. 2x times 2 is 4x. And 2 times 3 is 6. 3x plus 4x will add up to 7x. And there I have my 2x squared plus 7x plus 6, which was my original polynomial. So let's try this modified magic x again. Notice how I have a 3 in front of my x squared, which tells me I have to do the modified magic x. So on the top of my x, I do a times c. So 3 times negative 11, which will give me negative 33. B goes on the bottom, so I have 8 on the bottom. And I need two numbers that multiply to negative 33, but add to positive 8. And so I think I'm going to use that 11 and 3 again, but one of them has to be negative in order for me to get negative 33. But to have a positive 8, that means my bigger number has to be positive. So 11 is going to be positive, but 3 is going to be negative. And here's where the other change comes in. Because I had a 3 in front of my x squared, I need to put a 3 on top of both of the numbers that I came up with, and then simplify my fractions if possible. 3 and 11 can't be simplified, but 3 over negative 3 can. This will simplify to 1 over negative 1. And then remember, the number on top goes with my x, and the number on bottom tells me what I'm adding or subtracting. So my first fraction, I have 3x and 11, which will look like 3x plus 11. And then my second fraction is 1x minus 1, and so that's my second binomial. Let's try this a couple more times until we are used to the changes. So in A, I have a coefficient in front of my x squared, which tells me I have to use the modified magic x. So on the top, I need to multiply a times c. So 3 times 2 is 6. And on the bottom is my b value, which is 5. And I have to think of two values that multiply to 6, but add to 5. So I think the two values will be 3 and 2, because 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 plus 2 is 5. Now that I've come up with my values, I need to place my a, the number in front of x squared, on the top of both numbers, and simplify if I can. 3 over 3 can simplify to 1 over 1 when I divide both by 3, and 3 over 2 cannot be simplified. And then the number on top tells me what goes with my x, so I will have 1x plus 1 and 3x plus 2. In B, I also have a coefficient in front of my x squared. So on the top, I need to multiply a times c. So 2 times negative 18, which will be negative 36. And b goes on the bottom, so 5 will be on the bottom. And I need two values that multiply to negative 36, but add to positive 5. So two numbers I think of are 9 and 4. But I need to decide which one is going to be negative, such that I add to a positive 5. And in this case, the 4 will have to be negative because 9 is bigger than 4, which will let me have a positive 5 when I add them. 2 is the number in front of my x squared, so 2 goes on the top of both of my values. And I simplify if I can. 2 over 9 cannot be simplified, but 2 over negative 4 can. And it'll become 1 over negative 2 when I divide both by 2. And the value on top is what goes with my x. So my first binomial will be 2x plus 9, and my second binomial will be 1x minus 2. Last one. On top of my x, I'm going to multiply 6 times negative 2, which will get me negative 12. And on the bottom, I'll have negative 11. In order to have a negative multiplied number, I can only have one negative value. And so I believe this will be negative 12 and positive 1, because negative 12 plus positive 1 will get me negative 11. I then am going to put 6 on top of both of my numbers and simplify if I can. If I divide both 6 and negative 12 by 6, I will get 1 and negative 2, and 6 and 1 can't simplify. I make sure to note that my top number is going to be with my x, and so I'll have 1x minus 2 and 6x plus 1. So the overall idea of the magic x is the same. We are still thinking of two values that will multiply to the top of the x, but add to the bottom of the x. But we have a few changes to do with that coefficient in front of x squared, and so hopefully with more practice you can get the hang of those changes and then determine whether you need to do those changes all the time, or if you can just do the simple version of the magic x if there's no coefficient in front of the x squared. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you in class.